Okay, we can start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another IWA Intermittent Water Supply Specialist Group webinar. It's my great pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Joe Dalton. He is a water utility management and non-revenue water specialist with over 20 years of experience in a variety of roles within the water and sewage industry in the UK, Middle East, and Africa. Joe is also secretary of the IWA's Intermittent Water Supply Specialist Group and has considerable expertise in water distribution management and optimization, particularly with respect with non-revenue water management and performance-based contracting. He is currently working on World Bank-funded non-revenue water performance-based contracts in Africa, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, and on a USAID-funded non-revenue water management project in Hebron and Palestine. Over to you, Joe. Sorry, before I hand over, there will be an opportunity for question and answer at the end. Please, either you can type it in the chat or you can turn on your microphone at the end of presentation and put your questions to our speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Razia. So, as I said, my name is Joe Dalton. I'm going to give a presentation today, which I co-prepared along with Marlene Maria Roberts-Saidi. Marlene was, for the past 3 years, was the Chief Operating Officer of the Water and Sewerage Business Unit of the utility in the Gambia, which we'll be talking about. She's actually just finished her role with NAWIC. She's moved on to other things, but we worked this together for the last 3 years. This presentation, I was originally planning to deliver it at the, as the title suggests, at the IWA World Water Congress and Exhibition in Toronto, which was last month. But due to various logistical and administrative challenges, I was not able to make the Congress. So, which was unfortunate. It's from all the feedback, it seems it was a very good Congress. But following that, it was then discussed and decided that I would deliver it as part of today's the intermittent water supply webinar series. And one advantage of giving it like this is that, well, we have a bit more flexibility with time. For one, at the Congress, the time constraints are very, very strict is one. So we take a bit time today for discussion. And also, I know I'm joined by several colleagues from that project, from both the utility and Azaram, who I was working with there, are also on the call, and hopefully they'll be able to contribute some discussion at the end. So just to introduce the Gambia and NAWIC. The Gambia is a small country on the smiling coast of West Africa. It's basically surrounds the Gambia River. The country itself is completely surrounded by Senegal. As of 2023, according to the statistics department there, population of around 2.5 million people. The National Water Supply and Electricity Company, NAWIC as it's known, was created in 1996. Which it succeeded its predecessor organization, which was the Gambia Utilities Corporation. I just put a map of the Gambia there and a link to the country profile on the BBC website for who's interested. So, well, NAWIC is responsible for water supply to the Greater Banjul area and the Western region, which is where the majority of the population lives, but also to rural operations in the north, south Bank and lower and upper river regions. So various towns and villages up there also NAWIC's responsible for. So that's for water supply. NAWIC is also responsible for 2 very small sewerage catchments in Banjul, the capital area, which is at the edge of the peninsula, right on the mouth of the Gambia River, and also Kotu, which is an important tourist area on the coastline as well. So those 2 small sewerage catchments. So sewerage is a very small component of NAWIC, water being the main component. Yeah. So NAWIC, for the past few years, NAWIC have benefited from the World Bank funded Gambia Electricity Restoration and Modernization Project. That's been running since 2018 and it's completing this year. So part of that makes up of a whole program of projects. One of those projects was service contractor support to NAWIC. That was provided by Irish company Azaram, who I've been working with. That project was running since 2018. Phase 1 was 2018 to 2021, and phase 2 from 2021 to 2024. I was working on phase 2, so I came on board in 2021, and that project has just finished just 2 months ago, basically. So as part of that project and part of phase 1 was the creation of the NAWIC Water and Sewerage Business Unit to clearly delineate water and sewerage operations from the wider NAWIC organization, which of course also looks after electricity and shared services, which, central functions which service both the electricity and water and sewerage business units. So that the Water and Sewerage Business Unit was set up in 2019 with the idea of it being a business within a business, reporting clearly, transparently the water and sewerage operations. As part of that process, a new chief operating officer was appointed in 2021, which is Marlene, who prepared this presentation with me. So she came on board. As it happened, she came on board basically at the start of phase 2 of this project, which is when I came on board. So myself and Marlene have been working on this project since then until very recently. Marlene, of course, along with just this task, which I'll be talking about today, Marlene, of course, was running the whole Water and Sewerage Business Unit along with her team. So in terms of what we did, how we approached this project, the purpose of our project is to do capacity building of NAWIC, to create a strategic development plan, and to create an operationally efficient and commercially driven utility. That's our overall objective. So how we approach this specific task for the Water and Sewerage Business Unit for the past 3 years, we made use of this World Bank developed Utility of the Future toolkit, which is what I'll be talking about today. On the YouTube page of the Intermittent Water Supply Specialist Group of the IWI, you'll see a previous webinar was delivered by Yang Villa about how this tool was used in many water utilities in the Philippines, and that's available to watch. That's a very good introduction to the toolkit for anyone who's interested, and I encourage you to go and watch that. You'll get a good introduction to how the tool was used there. So to focus then on how we used it here in the Gambia, the Utility of the Future toolkit, this is the graphic taken from the toolkit. It has 2 parallel dimensions. What it refers to as a management and operational dimension and a change management dimension. So it's as in once the utility decides it wants to change and improve. In order to do that, we need to shake up the status quo. We need to analyze the past, what has been done up to now, and then pause, think about the implications of that. I'm not going to go through all these one by one, but all the way working towards deploying and sustaining a transformation, hopefully, of the utility. What the characteristics of a utility of the future are considered to be are these 4 main characteristics: resilience and continuity, as in continuity of supply, and resilience, as in the utility is set up to cope with stress situations as they arise. Innovation, utility always seeks to use the best available technologies as they become available, for reasonable prices. Always looking to leverage the best technology that's out there. Inclusion, the utility is committed to meeting, a universal service obligation. All people of all incomes, all levels of wealth. The utility has an obligation to supply all. So they're committed to inclusion and that nobody is left out. And market and customer orientation, that a utility is commercially driven. It responds, to market needs, and it functions and operates as a commercially driven organization. So part of this Utility of the Future assessment is to assess all aspects of a utility operation and to assess where they are, using criteria, all the criteria for those different aspects, all of which are detailed within the Utility of the Future documents, and benchmark it basically starting from elementary going up basic, good, well-performing, world-class, all the way working towards, you know, the ultimate objective, which is to be a utility of the future. So I put the link there. It's an open source tool. Anybody can access that, download, review, look at the guidance documents, download the toolkit itself. So I encourage you to do that. So having decided on this tool, made a decision that we were going to try and improve the utility, we sought to shake up the status quo by undertaking a diagnostic assessment to analyze the past. These phrases I'm taking from, you know, these are all the sort of buzz phrases, if you like, that are taken from the utility of the future in terms of what we're trying to do. So, and central to the whole utility of the future is here what's referred to as the success pyramid, as in the ultimate objective to provide better services to customers, with the four main characteristics of the utility of the future here on the outside. So we have to start off, we analyze the legal framework and governance that in which the utility operates. Enabling environment is another way of expressing it. We then mainly do a mainly quantitative service and performance assessment of these 5 core areas of utility operations, which are, you know, organization strategy, commercial management, technical operations, financial management, and human resource management. Then after that mainly quantitative assessment, we then do a detailed qualitative maturity assessment of these same areas. That's where we sit down in detail and go through in detail and assess where we are now and where we want to be, which in quite a detailed way, which I'll give an example of how that worked shortly. The tool also has what it refers to as zoom-in lenses. It's shown here in sort of the outline of the pyramid. This has also a similar maturity assessment tool for 3 additional zoom-in lenses, as it expresses it: green management, energy efficiency, and gender balance and diversity. So those also within the tool, it has a detailed maturity assessment tool for these 3. Now, in our project, we didn't do these. We focused on the 5 core areas because that was our priority in terms of our scope at the time. But the tool also has these areas built within it now as well. So just to give an example of the maturity assessment, this is just sort of an example of what the tool looks like. The tool is basically a monster of a spreadsheet, quite frankly, very comprehensive. So this is an example of the maturity assessment tool for the commercial management section. It shows customer relationship management, customer engagement, and basically all of these ranked from elementary up to world class, where we are now, where we want to be, what are the characteristics of the utility of the future that we want to aspire to, what's feasible and realistic. So we did this. I'm not going to go through this. This within the tool, this is immensely detailed, covering all these 5 core areas and the zoom-in lenses. So that's essentially what we did very comprehensively with the different utility, collecting information from the different departments to populate this to provide a detailed assessment. So having done that, again, to take the phrases from the tool, we have to pause and think about the implications after we've done our assessment. So that assessment was the initial assessment, comprehensive, was done and completed in 2022. So we assessed the enabling environment. This was what was assessed at that time. What is the system for setting service standards, setting tariffs? How is the utility set up institutionally? What type of financing arrangements does it have? Has it got its own sources of funding, or is it, you know, reliant on donor or government funding to step in? What are its accountability, autonomy and accountability frameworks? So, for example, one thing that happened as we were doing the assessment, there was a government performance contract where a 3-year contract was given by the utility, and you know, that was an attempt to improve the institutional setup and the standard, the reporting of those service standards in terms of corporate key performance indicator reporting and departmental KPIs. So that's a summary of the assessment we did at that time in terms of the enabling environment. Now, the level of service that existed at that time, this you know, it covered reliability, safety, inclusiveness, transparency, and response level. You can see here the assessment at the time was between elementary, basic, and touching on good. Why was that? Well, reliability, NAWIC is a utility which very much has intermittent water supply. So, you know, that's probably the main criteria in terms of reliability, safety. The Gambia is actually very fortunate that it has good quality raw water, which is mainly groundwater. The raw water is of generally good quality, but a challenge that NAWEC, the utility, has, there's very limited water quality testing facilities. They rely on an external agency. The regulator basically does water quality audits, but there was very limited internal water quality testing. So without that basically, you know, that's an important issue. Hence, in the absence of water quality testing for the utility, you know, the safety was relatively low. Inclusiveness, the assessment we did at that time estimated that there was about 66% connectivity of the NAWEC in the water in the NAWEC service area to all their customers. So there was, you know, there was still demand for more, even with the intermittent supply situation. There was still demand from more sections of the population to connect. Transparency, it was still a work in progress. There was, you know, when we did the assessment at that time, there was still limited transparency of regulatory reporting, but that was changing with the government performance contract. So the utility at the time was still doing catch up in terms of publishing, say, audited accounts, for example, within a reasonable time frame. So those are among the reasons for that score. Response level was slightly better. One of the reasons for that was that actually the two small sewerage catchments that NAWEC have, they were actually reasonably good at responding to any issues that arose in that sewerage network, partly because it is small, so hence it being that bit easier to manage due to its size. I'd say probably without that, it probably would have been a more basic score. So that was basically the assessment in terms of level of service at that time. Parallel to that, performance across the 5 core utility functions. Again, mixed performance, but some good scores that we ended up being a bit skeptical of. But commercial operations reasonably good. There was 80% collection efficiency, which is below the target of 95%, but nevertheless is reasonable. Now we have a policy of universal customer metering, so there was quite a high level of customer metering though, but they did have a problem with faulty meters and being able to replace them on time. A high level of non-revenue water, but that was very much an estimate based on estimated system input volume. So that was determined at the time that the reliability, the accuracy of the reporting of system input volume, it was an issue that needed addressing. So therefore, that's very much an approximation. The financial management, that looked EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, it looks like 55%. That looked to us suspiciously high when we punched the numbers in at that time. What our suspicion, because basically which would give a world-class rating, our belief at the time was that because they were still in the process of delineating the water and sewage business unit from the wider NAWEC organization, which of course includes electricity. So we believe that possibly that did not reflect truly the water and sewage business operation, which when we redid the assessment 2 years later turned out to be the case. So we'll come back to that. Human resource management, the reason, you know, staff productivity as a number of employees per 1,000 connections, well, it was assessed by the criteria as a basic score. And overall, there was some KPI reporting overall. This organization strategy is an aggregation of the remaining key performance indicators. At the time we did the initial assessment, there was some key KPI reporting, but it was limited in its consistency and its quality, you might say. So that was the score at that time. So in parallel with that, the maturity assessment we did, this was the comprehensive assessment of all the 5 core areas of utility operation. So we put this produced a maturity assessment here based on this performance cobweb, and this can be compared with this cobweb here was based on the performance assessment of these areas based on the quantitative assessment. The maturity assessment was the qualitative detailed assessment where we discussed one by one all these aspects of the operations. So you would expect these two to be pretty close. As we mentioned, we were very suspicious that the financial performance looked to be way higher than where they were. And when we did it again, that came back that, you know, that was a bit of an outlier that needed looking at more closely. The commercial performance seemed to be much higher than because of, you know, the reasonably quite good collection efficiency and high level of customer metering. But, you know, there was still a long way to go in terms of commercial operations at that time. For example, they had Customer service, there was no customer call center at the time. That's something that's advanced since. So there was still a long way to go in terms of where the utility wanted to get with these aspects. So this was all done then comprehensively, and based on all that, then we went through possible actions to address all these issues. And the actions were, it was initially 135 possible actions. So some of these, these were all actions, all separate actions covering all of these areas. What we then, when you refine the actions, you then find some of the actions overlap with each other. So it was all about starting with this possible actions and then, slimming it down to more practical achievable actions. So these were initially 135 possible actions based on what could be long or short-term actions. Each of these actions was then assessed based on cost, impact, and ease of implementation into determining what should be done. So after we did that, the next step was, again, borrowing the phrases from the utility future. We had to engage the team and act to ignite change. So looking at those actions, we consolidated those actions firstly into a short-term 100 days action plan. So we refined it down and we identified 14 short-term actions and targets, basically to challenge the present and to task the utility with implementing these that could be done quickly at minimal or very low cost. So that was done, and that the 100 days plan was implemented in late 2022, early 2023. We had weekly updates at that time. Once we agreed we agreed the actions, the types of actions that there were, I won't go. There was 14 of them, as I said. I won't go through all of them, but to give a few examples, there was one to populate the GIS was in existence, but the water network was not fully populated on it. That was one of the tasks, was to progress the population of the water network on that GIS. Another one was to progress the georeferencing of customers. Another one was to improve billing collection efficiency in particular areas. And another one was just to improve the overall consistency of KPI reporting, among others. So those were just an example of the actions that were done, that were identified. Say we identified the particular action, what its indicator was, how it would be measured, and what the target was after 100 days, recognizing that some of these things will take long to get a full solution, but what was achievable within that short-term timescale. So overall, this is sort of what was achieved. So to summarize the actions, and the actions were spread across 4 areas. We didn't put any in for financial management, but we put in a mixture for organization strategy, commercial management, technical operations, human resource management. You can see here, this was the original plan with the targets. What we achieved after the 100 days, you could say we got collectively, we got about halfway there. So it was a mixed bag of results. Some tasks were achieved, but some didn't go as well and turned out to be more challenging than maybe we expected. But I think the utility still found it useful. They discovered, yes, implementing change and trying to improve is not easy. It's identified bottlenecks, things we need to improve. So I think it was still a worthwhile exercise, even though we didn't quite reach the targets that we'd set ourselves at that time. So yeah, challenging to achieve all the targets, but still a useful exercise. So following on from that, the next step then was to take what we learned from the 100 days plan implementation, combine it with the original diagnostic assessment, and then use that to now develop, to envision the future, again, taking the phrase from the Utility the Future guidance document, use that to develop the medium to long-term plan. The Utility Future refers to a 5-year plan, but it can be slightly more or less than that. So we developed then, worked on the long-term plan, and that was linked to 5 strategic pillars, which were part of the overall capacity building project that Azeram were working on for NAWIC. So the main strategic pillars, which were embedded within the overall strategic development plan that was prepared for utility, was building the infrastructure, transforming the business, turning the organization towards the customer, moving to profitability and equitable and affordable access. So we worked on the Utility the Future aspect to align it with all these, basically what had been done. So here you see, this was the overall maturity assessment for the 5 core areas, showing this was the maturity that we assessed ourselves as at, And then this out here, where do we want to get to? This graphic basically starts at elementary in the center, working out to world class at the extent, all the way trying to get towards the objective of a utility of the future. So this is the summary of the 5 core areas. Down here, we actually see the breakdown, the performance cobwebs of each of those 5 areas, technical operations, and you can see how it goes into detail, say for technical operations, for example, expansion and rehabilitation plans, asset management, water treatment quality, distribution and non-revenue water, and so on. I won't start listing them all. And same in the other areas. So, you can sort of get a glimpse here of how comprehensive this tool is, in that each of these were assessed current maturity, where we want to get to. So when we were developing the long-term strategy, we're all the time trying to align and aim towards this. So that basically resulted in the medium to long-term services strategy, which was developed in 2023. Us working together with the utility, and it was basically approved in mid-2023, and it resulted in 38 overall medium-term, long-term actions split across the 5 strategic pillars that I just mentioned. So this, again, I'm not going to go through every action, but this is just a sample of what the plan looks like. So we have the strategic pillar. What is the strategic objective? The high-level task. Which specific utility the future action have we identified? What challenges are to be addressed? Which core utility function? Its cost, the time frame, who's responsible within the utility, the prioritization, and the indicator, what's the target, how we measure it, what's the time frame. So that's all contained within the plan. So some of these actions, they didn't just happen. Some of them, like for example, just to take an example of the first one, building the infrastructure. So one of the actions, execute the World Bank, French Development Agency, and OIC, that's the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They are funding specific production capacity improvement projects. Now, those projects were happening anyway, so they didn't just happen because we use this toolkit. But using this and putting it into the framework just tried to bring everything that NAWIC was doing into this framework to monitor, the improvements that are happening and track the progress and set, realistic targets on that. So that was, one of the actions for, building the infrastructure, improving production capacity, and then that would hopefully have a knock-on effect on the continuity of supply. So I'm trying to establish linkages between all these actions. Another one here, for example, was the utility. I prioritized construction of 20 kilometers per year of pipe connectivity, increased pipe connectivity, using their own sources of funds, so not just relying on donor-funded projects. So a mixture of actions across to address all these functions. So basically that was done in mid-2023. Following on from that, the next step, and essentially the final step of the utility future, is now to deploy that transformation and then hopefully sustain it with a continuous cycle of improvement. So I'm returning these graphics are taken from the Utility of the Future toolkit. So measuring the progress, what was our performance at the beginning in year 0, and then each year, hopefully we see a continuous cycle of improvement. So that was basically 1 year. So as I said, this strategy was approved in mid-2023. So in mid-2024, just as we were finishing, we revisited, right, let's assess how have we improved since this strategy was improved. So we redid, since in the first year after the strategy was improved, we reviewed progress against each of those 38 medium to long-term actions, and we repeated the quantitative service and performance assessment that we did at the beginning. We didn't redo the maturity assessment because that's very detailed, but the quantitative assessment we did. What did we find? Well, I'd say a modest improvement in service and performance is how I would describe it. We still have a long way to go. The overall service performance wasn't too different to the beginning, and I'll give a few reasons. Well, one, the production, most of the population of the service area, of course, has slightly increased. So overall, the continuity of supply hasn't really changed since we did it. So that's more or less the same. The water quality issue, what has happened, the utility has identified the needs for now a laboratory to have systematic water quality testing. That assessment has been done and a plan has been put in place to implement. But as of the time of this repeat assessment, there's still very limited water quality testing. So that's the reality. So hence, we still have some way to go to get that improvement. And similarly, yeah, with inclusiveness, yeah, there's been some connectivity increase. That's been a slight improvement, but yeah, still some way to go to improve. Sorry. Transparency, yeah, the utility, there's been a slight improvement there. The regulatory, the reporting, KPI reporting has definitely improved. And there's been some improvement in response level. A new customer call center has been established. Still, some of the improvements still, there's still some way to go to realize them in full, but there have been certain improvements. Looking at the performance here, the collection rate, probably not too much different between the collection rate and the metered water connections. The collection efficiency actually seems to be remarkably consistent at 80%. Seems to be a slight improvement in metered water connections, 90% as what we've collected. Non-revenue water appears to have increased slightly, actually, from when we did the baseline assessment, which was 2 years previously. However, it still has been, there is a separate non-revenue water project going on. And one thing that's definitely been highlighted is that the system input measurement still has to be improved. So that needs to be a priority for the utility going forward. The financial performance now, according to the numbers we punched in, it comes to 12%, which we actually think is a much more realistic score now, because we think that was unrealistic when we did that 2 years ago. So no, that's, even though it's a lower score, we think it's a more accurate and a better score. So you could say that not too much improvement there, you might say, but where there definitely has been improvement, well, the staff productivity, definitely according to the figures we've recorded, the staff productivity has improved. Staff per 1,000 connections, and also the KPI reporting. So you can see when we did the baseline at 28%, that was an overall assessment of the collective KPI reporting. It's now much better, 56%. You could say still some way to go, but certainly there's been an improvement in the KPI reporting since we did the baseline. So challenges remain. We highlighted, it's not easy. Trying to sustain and improve a utility is not easy. So we will highlight some of the challenges that remain. One, the customer georeferencing project, which was one of the 100 days actions, and it's been a priority since. That task has stalled, and which isn't good. So that is something the utility needs to address. As I mentioned, still limited water quality testing, but a plan has been put in place to address that. Measurement of continuity of supply has yet to improve. They're still very limited. That's an action that has been identified to improve the flow and pressure monitoring within the network. Still has to be implemented. Even though it has improved, the consistency of it still has to be improved, throughout the year. Procurement, that is still a challenge and is something the utility will often raise an issue, making sure that the utility always has stocks, materials in place to do their job. There's been improvement with that, but definitely it's still a challenge that needs addressing. So, but I would say, following on from this repeat assessment, it's a more realistic performance against the maturity. So you can see there now the financial management now matches the maturity, which is where we would expect. The improved KPI reporting has seen slight improvement against the original maturity assessment. So again, that shows progress. And the commercial operation, the good 80% collection efficiency and high levels of metering is still is good progress. There has been progress against the 38 medium-term actions. I will say there have been progress. The capital infrastructure projects are being progressed. The first customer survey for several years was carried out. I'd mentioned that NAWEC have prepared a water safety plan and the laboratory requirements that I mentioned. Staff appraisals and training have been done now within the last few years as part of the project. The GIS has been progressed. As of the end of 2023, the water network was about 95% populated on the GIS, which is a big improvement from where it was at the beginning of that year. Construction standards are at an advanced stage of development, and related to that, now we have got a budget in place to hopefully improve the connectivity in the second year of this plan. So sort of in conclusion, what I would say, well, the tool, it doesn't guarantee success. Just because you use it Doesn't mean you're automatically going to transform. There's still the hard work still has to be done. But what it does do, it holds the utility accountable, and it gives a framework for monitoring your performance. And hopefully, I certainly found it a very useful tool in working with NAWEC to try and help them improve. And yeah, definitely, I would recommend it for utilities who maybe would embark on a similar transformation program. So I think that's me. So thank you very much. And
thank you very much for very interesting, very informative talk and very interesting project. Thank you. So we have got time for some questions. Please, if you want to raise a question, please raise
I'd
hand.
like to invite Omar from NAWEC to maybe say a few words first, actually. I know Omar is there. Omar, or anyone else from NAWEC, but Omar, I'd like you to
thank you so much for this insightful presentation. I don't think one can put it any better. Like you already put it, this is the exact situation. Nobody, outside there need to come to NAWEC to understand what is there, because Joe have put everything, presented NAWEC to you in 30, 35 minutes. So that's the situation. And this, utility of the future toolkit has helped us, visualize and understand our maturity level right now. And it has also, helped for us to visualize, let's say, where we want to be a world class. And this is, of course, our aspirations. From the presentation, of course, I have gone through this, report one or two times, but from the presentation, in fact, it is very vivid and clear that, we are on the path, although we were not able to meet, our targets during the 100-day, plan. But then what it shows is that, it has exposed where our weaknesses are and our strengths. And that will, of course, help us to, now plan for the future, a better thing to meet the long-term, aspirations of goals. So I think this was a very, very good project, and the report is here. And looking at the projects, in place now that we are currently realizing, most of these projects are not completed yet, but it is very clear and vivid that we are on the right track, and we are going towards, meeting as recommended by the assessment that Joe has made, because we have, the World Bank project and the NRW implementation. We also have the WASIT project that is, focusing on the production and also distribution network and NRW management and capacity building, which are all very important things that were recommended by this study. And we also have the OIC funded project that has just started the implementation, which is also going to add on the production and also the distribution network. We have launched the water conservation program, which is currently in place, and it has, it has been in high gear. We are talking to people, and it's become very interesting, and people are becoming aware as to the reason why we need to conserve this water, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of engagements, and looking at the projects ongoing, it is very clear that, of course, it will come with challenges, which we are very much aware and aware of, but we are truly confident with this report and with the understanding that we have during this collaborative engagement. When Joe was developing this with Marlene, our then chief operating officer, this product is very, very, very important and going to be very, very, useful for the long-term goal, to achieve the long-term goal of the water and sewerage business unit. So I thank you, Joe, for this insightful, presentation. I thank Azorum, of course, without which this could not have been realized. They gave you all the necessary support and the collaborative approach. James is here, Tom is here, I mean, thank you all for your contributions. And we hope in the next, let's say 4 to 5 years, we will come again and do a presentation which will, I mean, see us somewhere around the world class and not basic.
Yes, maybe
Yes.
Omar, you might present at the next IWA conference on your progress in years 2 and
Oh,
3.
no, exactly, which is a very, yeah, absolutely. So I thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Omar, Tom Lanigan here from Azaram. I'm delighted, and thanks, Joe, for your invitation to participate. I recall in phase 1, it became very obvious to Azaram that water, not alone was it not included, but was almost explicitly excluded. And we fought very hard in Azaram during that period to get water explicitly included. And that explains Joe's arrival in phase 2, in fairness to the World Bank especially, and Chris Trimble, who has since gone, got the water part designed into it. And that explains Joe's presence. I mean, his contribution has been fantastic, not just as an individual, but in terms of a discipline and a structure to the future. Because most of you who are watching now are quite experienced with other utilities, and one of the problems always has been you get a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of money invested, but very often in a very poor context, a very poor governance context. And I think what Joe has introduced along with Marlene, and by the way, Marlene arrived at the same time as Joe, which was brilliant, because now the World Bank was focused more explicitly on water. The final thing I want to say, I understand that the MCC report on the further separation of water from electricity has been published. I haven't seen it. Maybe Omar, do you know if what the main proposals are there, and does it have implications for Joe's recommendations?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Omar.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed the last part of it, but
Yeah,
then
well,
I
the
think
last part
basically
basically was
it is
I
MCC,
understand the
the
report
MCC.
as issued on the further separation of water from electricity.
Yes, so this has advanced the MCC, and I mean just to summarize the recommendation is to, I mean, eventually split the water to operate water and electricity as separate entities, and water will be independent and electricity will be independent. And right now they are more focused on, I mean, looking at, I mean, the problems with electricity, and how to, I mean, put up some short-term, I mean, improvement plans to realize those things. However, water is included in this assessment, but then there hasn't been any focus on that. But then the clear outcome from the, I mean, the engagements and the recommendations from the stakeholders is, I mean, to split the two entities, I mean,
Okay.
completely, for them to operate. However, sewage will be underwater, because there are also options also, which, I mean, so sewage to be run as an, I mean, a separate entity, which are the discussions agreed on for now, to maintain sewage operations under the water services. So these are some of the options that, I mean, that came out. We have some other options that look at having a holding corporation, whereby you have the water, electricity, and, I mean, sewage under it, just like the status quo. It is, and you have the service providers, how do I call it? The customer service and support, the support services, You have the support services, water and electricity, to be under a holding corporation. You have another option that looks at having, yeah, a holding corporation, a separate, just like I said. I think these were the main, outcome of recommendations of the NCC, and it is progressing well. For electricity, although I would say for water, I think the discussion or the perspective is probably to get another consultancy who will also look into water aspect holistically, in terms of seeing it in the event that the two utilities are separated, how to make sure that water is also efficiently, run as a separate resource. Yeah, so these are, in a short, the recommendations of the NCC.
Thanks, Omar.
Okay, thanks. I will I think there's be a few more questions from others, of course, but I did want to. Well, Tom, you jumped in. I was going to invite James just to say a few quick words as well.
Thanks.
James, you want to say something?
Yeah, just two things, Joe. I just for the rest of the participants, I was team leader. Well, Joe was a consultant on the ASRAM project, and two things, I suppose, to comment, to say that I, as team leader, found the tool extremely useful because it gave us an insight into water as a team, which we didn't have previously. And it gave us also a way of measuring performance and monitoring to see how things were progressing. But I suppose, Joe, the question I have for you is, I remember when we were looking at the financial part, at least, some parts, and you alluded to it there, some parts of the tool are subjective and some are objective. And I suppose I've seen earlier versions of this tool, which have, things have changed over time. But from your own experience, and maybe your experience specifically with NAWIC, do you feel the balance between the subjective and the objective is right? Or when you went back and did your reviews, did you find that on the subjective it was easier to measure? Or have you any view maybe where the tool should go in the future in terms of that mix between the subjective and the objective, and in terms of improving the outcome further, if that's possible?
Yeah, I think, well, the maturity assessment aspect, that's definitely subjective. There's a bit like it's majority subjective, because it does require you, and it could be you could be easily guilty of wishful thinking in some of your assessments in terms of, well, being realistic about where you are now and indeed where you want to be. I think on the service and performance, I think when we were actually doing it, when we started it, it was actually version 1 of the tool. It was actually in the middle of our assessment. Version 2 came out, so version 2 is really now is the current tool. And I would say the changes between version 1 and version 2 made the service and performance, the quantitative aspect, more or less, it tidied up some of those, you could say, subjective aspects of that part of it. The maturity assessment, though, it's still subjective, but it is very comprehensive. So it does force you to think. So there does have to be some subjective analysis comes into it, but it's just so comprehensive that you'll get caught out eventually if you start giving over optimistic interpretations of it. Yeah. So
thanks, Joe, and well done again for all the for the light you shone and the support you gave to NAWIC in the water. It's been invaluable, I think, and thank you for
thanks.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a question in the chat. Please mention one major intervention that the project has made in terms of productive intervention, and some light on green management, please.
Well, I'd say on the green management, that was I mentioned that's basically environmental efficiency in all areas. We didn't really, that was part 1 of the 3 zoom in lenses. So it has this maturity assessment tool that now goes into detail on that. And that was in version 2. That wasn't actually in version 1 when we started the process off. So it's now within the tool, the environmental, a more detail, like in version 1, that would have been covered in technical operations as like, a subset of technical operations. In version 2, they decided, no, green management is actually an important issue in its own right. It deserves a much more comprehensive assessment But we just didn't do, you could say we had enough to do maybe with the 5 core areas at the time. So that's what we focused on in our assessment. But it exists within the tool. Again, you can do a very detailed assessment of the current environmental, you could say, management approach of the utility. So that's there. But in our project, we didn't do it in detail specifically. So please mention one major intervention that the project has made in terms of productive intervention. Well, I mean, there was our project, this particular project, we weren't building anything. This was advice on helping them to run the utility. But what we did was we helped NAWIC identify the problems we had, and they were able to do specific, like to give one specific example, I mentioned procurement. Well, back in when we did the 100 days plan, it was mentioned, right? We need to recruit a specific procurement officer dedicated to the water and sewerage business unit, because how this aspect is being supported wasn't good enough. So that specific action was done, and that has led to a whole assessment of the procurement operation. So that's just an example, but I would say it's a series of small actions almost, in that it's not like I say, this wasn't an infrastructure project. This was it was an operational support project, and I would say the examples I gave sort of are illustrative of that in terms of interventions. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I will go on to add that, I mean, even the GIS, although it wasn't realized during the exact time of the 100-day assessment, but I mean, because of the approach, we were able to, I mean, complete the GIS to, let's say, 98% or so as we are now. And regarding the use of the EasyCal, I mean, it enabled us, I know that is capacity development. We are now able to use the EasyCal to assess our own, I mean, so those are achievements I will add. Yeah.
Yeah,
EasyCal.
EasyCalc. Yeah, for anyone who's not, that's using the WCB EasyCalc to do non-revenue water balance calculation. So that's something that was brought in. That was another one of the actions of the 100 days plan. And now we should continue using that and do regular NRW assessments. Yeah. I think
great.
Igor,
So we have another comment and question. So thank you, Joe, for great presentation, and thanks for including the team for additional project insights. Question is, what would you change in preparation of action plan to improve its efficiency?
Well, in terms, I don't know what I would change. I think the approach in the tool is right. So I wouldn't change too much in terms of the approach. I think trying to do the short-term and long-term action plan is the right approach. It was good to attempt. I think now, certainly after the 100 days action plan, I can think you could look through some of the specific actions and maybe say, right, probably some of those were unrealistic, but I suppose you only learn that by trying in the first place. So we took the actions that maybe didn't work as well, and then the long-term, of course, you have to work with the utility. It was Marlene, the chief operating officer. We sat down with her and her team, Omar and others, and partly their own priorities. Of course, it's a two-way street. I mean, also as consultants supporting them, we can't impose everything. We give our recommendations, and we have to work with them and they have to work with us in terms of what they think is achievable and feasible within this time frame. But I think the approach is good because it's systematic. It does. I do think when we did the medium to long-term action plan, we were working on that, well informed of the original assessment and what went well, what didn't go well in the short-term 100 days plan. So I think that approach was good, and it helped us hopefully do a good medium-term action plan that hopefully Omar and the rest of NAWIC can take forward. Yeah.
Okay, great. There are no other questions. Just before we go, do you have slides about the YouTube?
Yes, I do. So, yeah. So just to mention, this is part of the IWA intermittent water supply webinar series. The previous webinars are on our YouTube page, and I put the one up there that Yang did. I don't know. Yang actually said you'd be able to join. Yang did a presentation on the use of this tool, mainly focused on Philippine water utilities. So definitely, if you found this interesting, it's good to go check that one out because it's very interesting. He gives a very good introduction to the tool as well. So that's there. I think Bambus has his hand raised. Yeah, Bambus, want to ask a question?
Yeah. Thank you, Joe, for a great presentation and insight on using the utilities of the future tool. Certainly, it's extremely informative, and there is great material, in the presentation. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the intermediate water supply group, if I may, Razieh and Joe, in addition to the series of webinars, we are also planning as a specialist group to do short workshops, half a day or so online. And we are planning our first one. And please look out for details, which they will come out very soon. We're in the process of discussing it amongst the management committee and have the detailed program shared with you. So we'll be happy to see you in these half-day workshops. There would be 2 or 3 presentations and then discussions on what is being presented in order to elaborate further on this important aspect of how do we improve intermediate water supply. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bambas. Also, we have another webinar scheduled for next month.
That's it. I put so the next part of our webinar series, Hassan Ben Ahmed. Next month he's given a presentation. The title is Intermittent Water Supply Fatality, and it'll be mainly focused on a case study from India. So, great. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And also we welcome all participants. If you would like to share your work with the members and those who are attending these webinars, please contact us, myself or Joe, and we can organize a webinar for your work as well, so you can share your work with our participants. I think that's all. Thank you again, Joe, for very informative talk. Thank you all of you for attending and making this session very interactive. And we look forward to see you at our next webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.